At 4:50 a.m., my doorbell launched a full-scale panic attack. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Then came pounding so loud it sounded like the SWAT team had a personal vendetta. I stumbled out in gym shorts and one sock, flung the door open, and found 3 people staring at me. A bleary-eyed cop, a guy in a polo clutching a clipboard, and Denise Crowley, president of the Maple Crest Reserve, HOA, wearing a reflective jogging vest and the unearned confidence of someone who once lectured the mayor about recycling bins. She jabbed a manicured finger at my face, shrieking that my lease had expired, that I was illegally occupying the property, and that they had every right to remove me. The cop closed his eyes for half a second, like he'd realized his career choices were questionable. I blinked at Denise and said, calmly, that I had owned this house for 3 years. She thrust a sheet of paper at me, insisting their records claimed I was a renter, my lease expiring at midnight, and I was supposed to be out by 11:59. The clipboard guy shifted awkwardly, mentioning that evictions rarely happened at dawn. Denise snapped that this was an enforcement action, and I was a holdover tenant. I sighed, turned back to the kitchen, and she screeched after me, asking where I was going and insisting I couldn't just walk away. I called back, getting what you should have asked for before calling the cops. I pulled my deed and closing packet from the drawer and said, welcome to my favorite new game, who actually owns the house. The cop flipped through the folder, eyebrows raising. Denise went from righteous fury to confused buffering. That was the morning everything began unraveling. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm the boring guy HOAs should love. Software engineer. Works from home. Doesn't throw parties. Doesn't own a drum set, motorcycle, or trampoline. Hobbies: making espresso, overwatering houseplants, and minding my own business. 3 years ago, I bought a 3-bedroom in Maple Crest Reserve, a suburban development outside Columbus, advertised as a quiet, modern community with walkable paths and neighborhood pride. Translation: they care about your garbage cans. Houses were nice, price reasonable, HOA fees allegedly for amenities like the pool, gym, and sad playground. Closing day, I signed until my wrist hurt. County recorded my name on the deed. 3 years, mortgage payments, kitchen remodel. Later this place was mine. Enter Denise Crowley. Pinterest board about neighborhood watch come to life. Short blonde bob, coordinated athleisure, permanent sunglasses dent, rotating clipboards. Introduced herself weak. I moved in as HOA president. Lived nearby. Handed me a glossy folder, told me to consult her for rules. Rules like God handed down on stone tablets. Inside, CC and R's written by demons, a welcome letter, and a friendly list of must-nots. Skimmed it. No illegal stuff, no broken-down cars, no goats on the lawn. I had no goats, Finn. 3 years, mostly uneventful. Occasional passive-aggressive emails about recycling visibility. Pumpkin violations for Halloween teeth. Letter about grass hitting 3.25 inches. Annoying, not life-ruining. Then the rental on the corner sold. Then another. Then another. Maple filled with renters. Denise snapped. She hated renters like they personally keyed her Honda, any moving truck. She materialized with clipboard, watching like passport control. Emails extolling ownership culture, skin in the game, preserving standards. Subtle as a brick, investor-owned townhouse started defaulting on fees. Denise took it personally. Complained at every board meeting recorded, posted that renter houses caused 90% of problems. Then the county's mailing list updated wrong, my address marked as renter occupied. Like handing Denise a loaded Nerf gun and calling it a bazooka, started small. An email titled Lease Renewal Reminder, claiming my lease expired end of month. I replied, I own the house. Please correct records. No response. Assumed spam. Next, a violation notice addressed to tenant about a cluttered porch, 2 chairs, and a fern. Non-compliant grill, fine. Exterior modification without approval, doorbell camera. Then Denise emailed, as a renter, you must have landlord and HOA approval for exterior changes. No record of your liaison file. Landlord, please submit current lease. I replied. I am the landlord owner since 2022. Attached deed, tax bills. No apology. Just, we'll look into it. 2 weeks later, 3 more renter emails. HOA portal showed late fees for mystery landlord. Auto draft for my HOA dues bounced because they'd rerouted my account to some property management office in Arizona. I phoned the company, and the representative said their files listed a lease set to expire this month, with the owner noted as Grove Willow Investments, LLC. I explained that wasn't me, that I was a real person with a mortgage and property taxes to pay. She asked me to provide proof of ownership. I sent it twice. She claimed she'd escalated it. Meanwhile, Denise escalated herself in her own way. I caught her snapping photos of my windows. One afternoon, I stepped out with my coffee and asked what exactly she needed. Her grin belonged in a toothpaste commercial, all polish and zero sincerity. She said she was just recording exterior conditions because they'd had issues with renters living at this address. I told her this house had one resident for 3 years, me, the owner. She said that according to the paperwork she was padding on her clipboard, this was a rental unit. That's when I realized she wanted this place classified as a rental. If it was, she'd get to control me twice, once as a resident and again through whatever poor investor she could manipulate. I told her to correct her forms and went back inside. That should have been the end of it. Instead, she set a 4:30 a.m. alarm and invited the police to my front porch. Cut to 4:50 a.m. doorbell shrieking. Denise, on my stoop, insisting my lease had ended. The officer Ramirez looked cosmically exhausted. He told me Miss Crowley had called in a possible illegal occupancy, claiming the tenants refused to leave after their lease expired at midnight and might turn hostile. I asked if she said that. He said yes, and that she also cited a supposed history of noncompliance and prior confrontations. That was all news to me. I handed him my deed. He reviewed it, opened his in-car computer, typed a bit, then nodded. He said county records listed Marcus Hale as the owner of this property since April 2022, no liens. No foreclosure, everything in order. He turned to Denise and said, this wasn't a rental, that it was my house. Denise flushed blotchy red. She snapped that it couldn't be correct, that her system said otherwise. Ramirez replied, county data showed I owned it, and her system must be wrong. The property manager cleared his throat and said their files might be outdated from when the developer still owned a few units. He said he was present only because she claimed an eviction was underway. Denise insisted there was one, that the board voted to end the lease for repeated violations, and I refused to leave, which was trespassing. I stared at her and said, you can't terminate a lease that doesn't exist, and even if I were renting, no HOA can't evict anyone. I told her, that's landlord-tenant court, not whatever this is. Her eyes sparked. She said I'd ignored several notices, never submitted a lease for review, installed cameras without approval, and left my trash bin out after 8 a.m. paramount offenses. Truly. Officer Ramirez lifted a hand and asked Denise whether she told dispatch I was illegally squatting in a home, refusing to vacate, and possibly dangerous. Denise paused, then said she told them he might be confrontational and was ignoring a lawful order. Ramirez asked, from whom? She answered the HOA like that should be self-evident. He sighed and said, okay, here's the situation. He told her she'd filed a false report, inflated her authority, and dragged him out at dawn for what amounted to an administrative paperwork mess. She said it was a serious one. He looked at me and asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes. Harassment, false reporting, trespassing if she stepped onto my property without permission, which, by the way, she absolutely did. Denise's mouth fell open. She protested that I couldn't do that, that she was the HOA president, and this was her role. Ramirez said it wasn't her role to misuse 911 or pretend to be a landlord. That was the moment I chose not to let this slide. This wasn't going to be another ignored situation. This was war butt fought with PDFs. I work with databases all day. You know what makes my brain sing? I spent the next week assembling a digital murder board, county deed and tax records in my name, the original. Closing documents, screenshots of my HOA payment history, every single email sent by Denise or the management company, plus that 4:50 a.m. lease termination notice she taped to my door after the fact. There it was, black on white. Pursuant to HOA authority and board vote, your lease is hereby terminated for failure to comply with occupancy documentation requirements and repeated violations, it stated. You must vacate within 24 hours to avoid legal action. HOA cannot legally evict you from your own home simply for disliking your Ring camera or at all, really. I took all of it to a real estate attorney named Jordan Mendes. Jordan flipped through the stack, leaned back, and whistled softly. Wow, she's ambitious, he said. She really thinks she's the sheriff, landlord, and county recorder rolled into one. He pointed out the highlights. Denise's faux lease termination could qualify as attempted wrongful eviction. Her 4:50 a.m. 911 call labeling me an illegal occupant was a false report. If she had ever stepped onto my property uninvited to inspect it, that counted as trespassing. And her tenant records were probably being used to treat me differently than actual owners. A fair housing nightmare if it went wrong. He asked calmly if I wanted to go after her. I said yes with more enthusiasm than expected. So, we started. Jordan filed harassment and wrongful eviction complaints with the city, sent a stern letter to the management company and HOA board while copying the HOA's insurance, and filed an open records request for the 911 call and incident report. The 911 recording was something else. Denise's voice claimed she was HOA president and that illegal tenants refused to leave the property. She said their lease had expired, they ignored notices, and there were fears they might turn violent. I paused it, holding a mug that said "Introverts Unite Separately" and wearing one sock. Jordan said, yeah, she's in trouble, the management company, realizing the county had me as the owner and their own system was a mess. Went from "will escalate" to "we had no idea this was happening. Please don't sue us," within 48 hours. They scheduled an emergency board meeting. I spent the weekend talking to neighbors. Turns out Denise had entered someone's backyard to measure grass, threatened another resident's teenage son with law enforcement for slightly crooked parking, and sent lease verification letters to 3 other young owners she thought couldn't really afford the homes. Pattern established. By the emergency meeting, people were bringing popcorn. It was in the Mappler Crest clubhouse. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, folding chairs, the physical embodiment of an email copied to too many people. Denise sat at the front table like royalty, flanked by 2 board members who looked anywhere but present. The room was packed with 30 to 40 residents, whispers everywhere. The property manager cleared his throat and said they were here to discuss enforcement actions and record keeping. He added, I had requested time to present my perspective. I plugged in my laptop, pulled up slide 1. Who owns my house? Spoiler, me. I kept it simple. Screenshot of county records showing me as owner, copy of my recorded deed, timeline of 3 years of HOA payments, and their incorrect tenant profile. Then, I played the 911 call. Denise froze. Several people glanced at her. Next slide. The 4:50 a.m. notice she taped to my door. Next, header reading. Things the HOA cannot do. Evict, terminate a lease, or call 911 to remove you from your own property. I read excerpts from the city's landlord-tenant code and state HOA statute, highlighted by Jordan. I said, Miss Crowley has repeatedly called me a tenant despite proof of ownership and treated renters as superior residents. I added, that's not just annoying, it's legally risky. Right. Someone in the back shouted, she did the same to me. Next slide. Anonymized emails from neighbors documenting inspections, threats, and commentary about street stability. I didn't even need to editorialize. The property manager looked like he wanted to vanish into the carpet. I said on advice of counsel, I've filed complaints with the city and state and retained an attorney for civil remedies against harassment and attempted wrongful eviction. Officer, Ramirez encouraged me to act and said, the HOA president's report was not accurate. I displayed the incident summary. Names redacted except Denise's thundercloud silence. The HOA insurance rep, previously unnoticed in the corner, spoke sharply. Misrepresenting authority and abusing emergency services was a serious liability. Translation: The money people were very, very unhappy. Denise grabbed the mic and claimed this was out of context, that she was protecting the community from a dangerous squatter. The insurance rep cut in. Impersonating a landlord or law enforcement was not her duty. Quiet treasurer Ron, who never made eye contact, cleared his throat and said, "I move to remove Crowley as president immediately for misusing authority and endangering the association."
That's silence.
Then a voice from the second row seconded it. Another call to vote. Hands went up. 5 board members voted to remove her. The only hand down, Denise's, the property manager, oddly relieved, declared the motion passed. Crowley removed and suspended pending review. Denise sputtered she couldn't be removed, that she was the HOA, and without her, it would become a rental free-for-all. Someone muttered, "Promise." She stormed out, toppling a chair. As the door slammed, my phone buzzed. Jordan calling. The city investigator was opening a file on the 911 misuse, and management wanted to discuss settlement. The city fined her $1,500 for misuse of emergency services and issued a formal warning about future false reports. My attorney filed and quickly settled a civil claim for harassment and attempted wrongful eviction. The settlement covered $4,000 in legal fees and $5,000 in damages. Denise paid personally because HOA insurance refused coverage. At the next board meeting, Denise sat, red-faced in the back, arms crossed. She stood up, shouted, "This is ridiculous," and walked out. Never returned. Within a month, a for sale sign appeared in front of her.